a bunch of time collecting, like organizing all of my uncommitted work and splitting it up and like commenting it. And I don't have my PR comments written yet. This week was a huge chunk of work, it was really good to get it done, but it's all just been sitting on my computer. So I was trying to get that collected. And now my brain is a little tired. So
Understandable.
um
Yeah, I haven't even started with algorithm yet. Their CTO was out of town this week, so I wasn't able to get access to the GitHub and all
oh,
that,
okay. Maybe you should mention a
which
little
is
bit of
fun.
that once we go. I mean, we're already live, so I don't know. Some of this portion of the conversation might end up hitting our stream once we. I'm gonna just hit the go live button right now, so we're gonna be live, like
Uh,
double
yeah,
live.
I'll probably bring it up next week after I've done a little work.
Sure.
You know how you feel when it's like, I'm not sure it's happening yet. I mean, it is, but I'm not sure because it hasn't happened.
Absolutely. Totally get that. All right. Well, we're double live in all senses. Tired but alive.
Yo, all the way live.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Upskill and Chill. Um, Starting actually a little early this time, which is nice. It's a good change from like 5 minutes late.
And everything worked. We just got on and we're loaded up and good
Yeah,
to go.
it's amazing what happens when the services you use to go live just work the first time. It's fantastic.
It's a
Uh,
beautiful thing.
how are you doing today, Courtney?
I'm tired. Been a long week. Um,
Agreed.
lots of things happening in the world of Courtney. Some that we can talk about, some that I'll wait to update until a later date. But we all know I've been working at a bakery at part time in the meantime, and I
Yum.
do that on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and today we cleaned out the whole fryer and replaced the oil and everything. And tell you what, I never want to fry another thing again. A, because I've seen what gathers in the bottom of those things, but also I'm just tired of that smell. Happy to be
Hmm.
home. Happy to be in front of my console, ready to code some. How about you?
Yeah.
What's good with you?
Uh, my one comment on that is anybody in the LA area should go to the bakery on Monday because it's gonna be fresh oil now, right?
Yes.
Everything's
Oh,
gonna be
I mean,
real good.
as of tomorrow, it'll be only the freshest donuts.
Yum. I'm doing well. Doing well. It's also been a very busy week. I've been continuing to push on this integration for escrow.com as an escrow service inside of the Nebulae platform, alongside our existing smart contract cryptocurrency escrow service that we provide through smart contracts. This would do the same thing for like credit card, PayPal payments in what's known as fiat currency in the industry. Um, that's been going really well. It's been a lot of full stack stuff, which has been really good for me. I've
Hmm.
been doing a lot of um, back end work as well, which has been cool with endpoints and controllers and database stuff, reaching out to the escrow API a whole bunch to like set things, get things, and then funnel that all back to the front end. It's been really good. I'm feeling like really confident in my coding skills. Of course, now today there will be some ridiculous thing that's going to trip me up. You'll see, but I'm feeling pretty good with all the practice I'm getting right now. Feeling confident on that.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, but with all of that, I'm a little tired. My brain is a little tired already today from pushing on that already today. Making some great progress, but now I'm a little sleepy. So little afternoon coffee to hopefully remedy that a tiny bit. Um, do you have any music thoughts? We haven't done music for a little while. The only reason I'm bringing it up is because I have something kind of new to share, but
Yeah, hit me. What you got?
uh I don't have the link open in front of me at the moment, but no, actually I do. I have some.
Start searching for a link, noticing that Spencer doesn't have his yet.
There you go. There you go. So I've been listening to a variety of different forms of music while I've been doing development, and I kind of go around back and forth between some sort of like rock, instrumental, fusion type of stuff that I really enjoy, or some form of like electronic music. I really enjoy listening to all sorts of electronic music. I think what happened was that I was listening to kind of more of a rock metal album on YouTube,
Mm,
and then that one finished, and it just kind of like popped me into like the next suggested thing without me knowing about it. And uh, I'll just pick this one because it was good. But what I have now discovered is this. I'm not sure if it's all. Yeah, it's all it's everything here. Oh, except for the one from today. There's a channel called Metal Mastery,
mm.
and I'll share. Let's see. I'll share it here in the LinkedIn comments, but I'm also going to put it in our chat here so that you can grab it too. But the channel's called Metal Mastery, and I'm sure a bunch of this is or nearly all of it is not AI generated, but like written on the computer, composed on the computer with digital instruments to some degree or another. The album artworks are awesome. This one in particular is a like humanoid phoenix with a guitar that he's shredding on, which is pretty sweet. But it's just like instrumental metal music of different genres. So this one's like
Oh, that's
neoclassical.
sweet.
Yeah, neoclassical and power metal for 2 hours. It just goes. It's just song after song. It's all instrumental. There's no vocals. It's just like great like energy music in the back of your head while you're doing this stuff. There's another one that's got a dragon playing a guitar. Um, there's an astronaut playing guitar. There's a whole bunch, and it's
I love
it's
this
it's really sweet.
buff anthropomorphized phoenix.
I know, right?
So cool.
The music is really good. It's really catchy. Like it's not as like deterministic and just like cookie cutter as you might expect. Like the compositions are again, granted I've been listening to it not full focus because I've been doing the development, but
Mm, mm.
I'm hearing lines and solos and riffs and stuff, and it's catchy. It's catchy stuff. Whoever's
There's
whoever's behind
something
this channel is crushing it.
there's something interesting about listening to music while you do things like code, where like if you listen to it enough, it really does like embed itself in your psyche. And then when you actually give it a chance and you listen full attention, it's like I feel like I get more out of it because I'm starting to identify things that I've been hearing and I
Mm,
recognize, and now it's like, oh, now I'm hearing the full context for real,
yeah.
instead of just in the background. I'll have to try to. I'll give this a listen later. I was trying to listen while you were talking, but that was too much input.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's sweet. It's definitely been giving me some good vibes the last couple of days after I discovered this, and then I've already bookmarked like 6 different ones because they're all legit.
Okay. I got something. This is kind of cool. Last weekend, so I have a couple nephews that are older than most people's nephews, I suppose, at my age. But but the oldest lives with me, and he's 23 now.
Okay.
And he and I got to play a gig together recently.
Oh, sweet.
Now we've done this before, but this is the first time I've played bass and he's been on drums. And we
Oh, he's a
played with this
drummer.
artist.
Awesome.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he's a keys player originally. Ah, there he goes. Um, but beyond that being cool, I really like the artist we played with, and I will go ahead and share. This is another LA local named, well, his name's Michael, but his artist name is Linus, and I will share it
Nice.
here in the chat. It's kind of I don't know I don't know how to define this. It's some kind of lo-fi adjacent mm, pop, I guess. I don't know. But this is one of his new songs. We performed it this weekend, and it was quite fun. Quite fun. I like it. It's a style of music that gives me a little breathing room on bass.
Yeah.
One thing that maybe our listeners don't know is bass players often get relegated if they're not careful to just do this kind of style parts.
Rut, rut, rut,
Um,
rut, 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 rut,
Yeah,
rut.
yeah, just do the same thing over and over. And for some, that's fine, and for some songs, that's fine. But making a whole career of that can be exhausting. So it's nice to have chances to expand on your own musicality. and I had a chance with this. So yeah, well,
This is
happy
really
to help
cool.
out the friend.
I really dig this.
Yeah.
This is like in my mind, this is kind of making me think of like a little bit more of a chill Polyphia, if you're familiar.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
I'm familiar with Bolivia.
yeah, because
Yeah, I see that definitely.
his name's Tim Henson, right? I think the guitar player and founder of Polyphia, and his whole vibe behind his like crazy revolutionary style of guitar is trying to make hip hop metal basically. Um,
Right, right.
and this has that same kind of hip hop like vibe
Yeah,
with
the beat is all that.
with the guitar, active guitar, right? But it's not as like intense as the Polyphia stuff. It's definitely more chill. So but in my brain, it kind of goes in that same category, and this is cool. I appreciate. I'm not a really big hip hop aficionado or fan that much, but I can really appreciate it. The stuff that I do like that I've heard um, involves real instruments, right? Not just like a beat whipped up on someone's computer and then some guys like rapping or singing to it. The idea
Hmm.
of doing the hip hop vibe with live instruments, I can get behind that. And this is obviously that. You guys performed it live, which is just sweet. I think it sounds great.
Yeah. Well, I think I mean his is sort of hybrid usually. Usually the guitar is live. He plays the bass usually on his own tracks, but I mean, I guess you could say that the drums are sort of a mix because they're usually produced on an MPC, like on the pads. So
Yeah.
it's like played live, but not on a drum kit exactly. On a.
Yeah, but
I mean, people would be familiar with that, I
performed
guess.
with your show, right? You said your
Yeah,
nephew
oh yeah,
played the drums,
perform
right?
live. Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that alone gives it such a like if you're watching that live performance, it makes it so much better than just a dude playing a track and like singing to it. Like the live drums adds that. Call me biased, but gives it
yeah.
a
Why
little
do you
bit more
feel
of
that
that
way?
like
It's so
that
strange.
visceral. Yeah, yeah.
No, I'm just
Sorry.
messing with you.
Yeah.
I
No.
totally get it. I also like having a live person to jam with in the rhythm section. So,
Oh yeah.
but different textures and all that. But yeah, I'm glad you remembered to bring that up because I've not been thinking about that aspect of this stream every week for a while now.
We've kind of skipped over it for a little bit. I didn't really have anything new to share for a while, so it's nice to go away from things for a little bit and then come back. Speaking of going away
100%.
from things and then coming back, last we left this process and project, we were having a state issue trying to show a loading spinner when we submit our form. And just before the show, I was able to give a little bit of look at it and figure out a solution. But then it also kind of raises another question. So I'm gonna share my screen.
Yeah, you want to walk through the solution and
Yeah,
then
and I
we'll
will I
maybe
will
try to investigate why.
show the people. Yeah. So we have the submit handler, and what we're attempting to do is display a spinner and remove the text from the button, as well as disable. The disable part, that probably didn't work because it's not inside of the button. We'll have that's a detail for later. But that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to set loading to true, have a spinner show up, take away the submit text for a second, and then set the loading back to false after the task has been added to the database and we've received the signal back. It was not working last time. We could set to true, but if we tried to anywhere in the flow set back to false, it just instantly kicked it back to false. Wouldn't work. Wouldn't show us the loading stuff at all. I threw this with an explanation of our problem into the find tool, PHIND, find.com, and asked it to make a suggestion. This was its suggestion, and it worked. Imagine that. So, one thing is that I completely had forgotten about the fact that this finally block exists on a try catch. And it also, if you do the old school, if you want to say old school, um, promise handling where you do then catch, there's also a finally available in that format as well. And that just
Hmm.
executes after the very end of everything up to that point. So after everything in the try block has happened, we'll get to the finally block. I still believe the catch block will short circuit, and then the finally won't happen because you've caught an error and it'll stop there, I believe.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
so I mean, the alternative would be to just put this here, which is what I've done in the past, and I think that would still work fine. But why not do something to remind myself that
Excuse
this
me.
exists? Because this is actually a very useful piece in some points. So added that to put that down there, but that's not really anything new. We already essentially had that up there. What we didn't have was an on submit handler in the form. Previously, we had an action. We were submitting a server action through the form because this component used to be a server component, not a client component. But then once we decided we wanted to put the loading state back in here, we need state. That means it has to be a client component, which is why we are making the form its own component so that we can isolate where we want to use client. We have use client at the top, which allows us to use state inside of this component. We don't know why yet, which is maybe something we'll research here. And maybe Courtney's already on that over there with the clicky
Yeah,
clackies.
I'm looking a little bit.
But uh, for some reason, if we use the form with an on submit and then go through this process, it works just fine. I'll demo that here in a second. But if we use the server action, then it does not work. And without knowing at all why this is happening, my hypothesis is just that the action is somehow, it's linked to server actions, so server side. Server does not work with state, or maybe it doesn't play nicely, at least with state. And on submit is a client side um, alternative to the action, right? They're kind of the same thing. One's server, one's use client. We're doing use client stuff, so it makes sense to me why the on submit would work and the action might not. But what's the more specific dealio? I'm not sure. So let me bring this our app over here, and I'll put in a test loading here, and then we hit submit. There's our loading. Boom, it goes back, and we have our task. So that's exactly what we want to happen. And our form is cleared as well. That was the other goal that Courtney so geniusly solved for us last time. So, with all of that said, Courtney, I know you're over there reading. Do you have any discoveries for us thus far?
Yeah, I've been kind of trying to break this problem down. So I think I've been maybe confusing the problem I thought that we were having with a similar but slightly different problem when it comes to use state with React. So what I've dealt with before is like, let's say you have a function and you're calling set state. Let's keep it simple, like you're doing addition, let's say. So uh, the first thing that happens is you're taking 0 and you're adding 1. You're taking whatever the state is, this number, you're adding 1. And then you have some other conditionals that may or may not run, and those also modify that number in one way or another. Um, it's only the last one that works, basically. So like because each one of those calls to set state will be batched and run, but you don't have access to the modified state variable while you're still in the function setting state. And I'm trying to think of like a better. I wish I had like a playground ready to show this.
I'm following.
So
Yeah.
that's that's more or less the same as what we expected. But the reason it doesn't change is when it comes to re-renders of the interface. So when I say it doesn't change, what I mean is like it's not re-rendering every time the state changes. It only re-renders according to any state changes in the component when the function is done running and it finishes running like the batch. So let's say there's some loading state like we are doing, and we're also trying to modify these numbers within this function. It won't re-render the whole component to show like Now it's 1, now it's 2, now it's 3, now it's 4. It's only going to re-render after the last one has run. And that's what I thought we were running into here. But we're not actually running into a problem of re-rendering. We're running into a problem of not having access to an updated state variable within the function. And I feel like that issue maybe runs parallel to what I just found on this React article, but it's not the same thing for sure.
Hmm.
So so separating those two related but separate problems out. Now the question is, how come what you showed us is true? Why is it that from a pure handle submit no server action um, function call that we're able to set loading to true so that our loading figure actually loads and works, and then set it to false after we're done running the function, since there's some time in there. Why is that true? But when we involve a server action, we're not able to do that. And I'm not sure, but I have a sneaking suspicion it has to do with the very nature. I mean, you've already been putting this forth, but it has to do with the very nature of like what a server component is and how it operates. So what I've been doing is just trying to read through the Next.js docs for one, just to see, because like one thing that happens a lot for me when we run into these problems is like I've read some of these docs like a million times now, just trying to like every time I run into this problem, I try to deal with it. And once in a while, I read a thing again and I go, oh, I think I actually know what this means now. First time I read it, I thought I knew. And the second time, I thought I knew. And now, oh, wait a minute, hold on, there's something new going on here. So I've been looking through the, what is this? This is the data fetching section of server actions and mutations. Um, so give me a minute here. I don't have a full answer at this point, but I think you're right. I think it does have to do with the server action and how that actually works. Because, well, the only thing is, when I've done a search on this, like I did a query based on our situation to the best of my abilities. I found a Reddit thread where someone recommended that we do, I think, exactly what we were doing, which is in your client component, bring in the server action and run it inside of a separate function that also does the other things that you needed to do regarding state. That's supposed to work, and yet it doesn't, clearly. So I don't know if it was just there's something that we're missing or I'm missing or what have you. Um, you don't have to call the server actions in the form submit. You can simply invoke it in the onSubmit handler instead, where you also update the state. Sounds like what we're doing, or what we were attempting to do,
Yep.
rather.
Yep.
After the server, store data in the database. I don't know. Do you have any ideas yourself about like
I
where
mean,
we
I
might go
haven't done any
forward?
research and was kind of letting you go on that.
Hmm.
The one thing that I was going to mention, and this is we're kind of like simultaneously talking about two things. You keep going back to you keep mentioning the like the state batching thing and being able to like call state and access it on the next line and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
In relation to that behavior, I'm assuming you didn't get a chance to watch the video that I sent you earlier today on
No, no.
Discord. Okay, that video like more or less answers that question.
Okay.
It's
Well, walk me
it's
through it if
really
you know.
good video. And I pulled it up here so I could share the link with our viewers because I found this video very great. So essentially, yeah, I'll share the link again to you now, but it's also in our Discord messages. Essentially, he goes through an experiment. He explains how use state works. He explains the similarities and differences between use state and use ref. And then he constructs his own custom hook that allows you to use and set and read state synchronously, the way you're able to like set, read, set, read, set, read, all in a flow. And he
Mm-hmm.
explains how he was able to do that and make it work. And it has to do with I've only watched it once, and it was this morning. But if I can summarize some of the points that I'm remembering, you uh, you know how like in a function in JavaScript, set if you like declare a piece like a variable in a function and then use it, you call that function. Every time you call that function, it's going to reset to that initial set of or the declaration of that variable, right? It's just going to reset to whatever the default is at the top of the function before running the rest, right? So to
Mm-hmm.
avoid doing that, you move that variable outside of the function, and now it can hold on to information, and then the function can run and like update that function, that variable, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
he says useState basically does the same thing. It's setting a variable outside of the component, um, so that when the component re-renders, it's able to then pull back in that variable, so that the component can totally re-render and update its view, but it doesn't default all the state back to whatever the default is, right? Uh, so that was part of the explanation. But then use state, whenever a state variable set by use state changes, it triggers a re-render of that component. Um, and he said that use ref is another way that you can hold on to state. If you use ref the way that you would use state, it will hold on to the value, but use ref does not trigger re-render when the content of a use ref variable changes. But use ref can be called in a synchronous, like line by line. Like you can set something here, add two to it, print it, add two, print it, and each one of those will update as you expect. Use state does not work that way. So then he went through a process of, like I said, creating a custom component that, through a combination of use state and use ref, he was able to like formulate a custom hook that operates in the same syntax in the same way that your typical React use state functions, but it can be used synchronously. And he actually at the top of the video said, I don't suggest using this in your projects because it kind of breaks the way you would expect these things to work. But it was really
Mm-hmm.
more of an experiment and a research into like why this is the way it is, and how and a further understanding of just use state and use ref. It was really really cool. At some point in time, I'm sure I had like heard everything that he said before, but it's been a while. But then packaging it all under the umbrella of this conversation was really interesting. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm definitely gonna check that out. But I still feel there's something left unexplained for me, which is because we didn't really change much, to my eyes at least. We we just removed the server action from the
Hmm.
flow and are doing the same logic essentially, but from the client. And my wonder, oh, I guess what I'm wondering is why does that interrupt or change the nature of use state inside of our function? Um, because if I understand correctly, what's happening with the server action is the client calls the server action, which is itself just a function that performs things. But I don't understand why that would necessarily change what is happening with use state. Like why all of a sudden we weren't able to get access to that loading chain to setting loading rather in the middle of all this, and that is less clear. I'm seeing like I'm on Stack Overflow right now, just kind of reading through some answers, and I see some discussion, but no consensus on specifically what's happening.
Hmm.
Um,
To be clear, what I was that video doesn't
mm,
necessarily answer like our broader question.
oh,
Um,
I see, I
I
see.
I think it had more to do with your question about like state batching and whatnot.
Oh, right,
I'm
right,
still a
right.
little
Yeah.
bit confused. Uh, like I know this works. I knew this pattern would work. It was the action use of action as opposed to on submit that made it not work. But the idea of calling set state, doing some things, and then setting state again at the end. Um, and then in there's also like a couple of re-renders, right? So we call our function, we set state to true, we set loading to true, which means the loading button that re-renders, right, and shows the loading, and
It
then
does
we
re-render.
and then we send the add task. We send the form data off to do that. We await that. We get the promise back, and then once we get that, we hit the set loading at the end, which sets it to false, which then uh, both re-renders the button back to the text. It takes away the loading spinner, and we also render the new to-do item, the new task, into our list. Uh, so it makes a little bit more
I
sense
have
to
a
me
theory.
now that I'm thinking about set state
Hmm.
as reaching outside of the component and setting a variable, and then just being able to refer back to that with regardless of how many times that component re-renders. Thinking about it that way, that makes a little bit more sense now. What's interesting to me, and I'm sure it's probably just putting something on the stack. Um, it's probably putting that function on the stack. Maybe like this is the deeper computer science part of it that I should look into. Is that you've got a function running inside the component. You're setting state outside of that component. That component is re-rendering, but this function is just going through like while its surrounding component is like maybe shifting and changing. So I'm betting that the function is probably being set into the stack somehow, um, and then running independently, so the re-renders of the component can all happen without interrupting the call of that function, and then you're just going down. I don't know if that's making any sense. I'm rambling. It's making sense in my head, but I don't know if I'm communicating it
Well, if
correctly.
I understand correctly, I think I have a theory why the spinner gap actually does re-render. Because it's not supposed to. It's supposed to only re-render when we have finished the function and that batch of changes is executed. But it's not supposed to like. We should probably just test this with like a simple counter or something like that. But if we run uh, increment like 3 times, it shouldn't show us each increment. It should only show us the final result. But I think the reason that this spinner gap is working is because we're passing loading as like a value to the button, or yeah, I mean, I guess we are passing it as a value, but also as like a conditional for other things to happen in the button. And I think maybe it's just causing the button itself to re-render because the button is not the component that loading comes from. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
there are these like dependent components that are receiving changes. That still doesn't feel like maybe that's it,
It
but that was my thought.
this would all still work all the same if that button was just a standard HTML button. The syntax would be different for it. Like we're passing that button into another component, but you can do this exact same pattern with a standard HTML button, and you have the loading change. Like the text of the button could either be like submit or loading based on the loading state.
Hmm.
So it doesn't have anything to do with the fact that our button component is a custom component. This is like
Hmm.
the nitty gritty of React re-render cycles and use state and all that stuff that again I studied at one point when I was first learning React and understood this a bit more. But over time, at least my brain just kind of boils down to like I know this works, and then
Yeah, yeah.
maybe if you don't think about all those extra layers of details, which you have no control over, right? Because we're not interacting with it on a regular basis. You just learn the patterns that work and you know they work. But then thinking about why is it that this pattern works again and how is this pattern working? It's not should refresh on that. But with this the batch state, I think the difference here instead of just doing like a counter, boom boom boom, like if in this handle submit, actually we could test this really quickly. Let me let me
Do we
let
want to
me
create like a playground route or something like that?
We could just create a component, yeah, a component somewhere too. But let me test it right here real quick. So
Sure.
we have this. Um, I'm just gonna we're gonna take all of this as the code we want to save, but we're just gonna get rid of it for the moment. And we're going to set loading to true and set loading to false, right? Back to back like that.
Hmm.
We'll just do it that way, and then let's see what happens when we actually submit that. Um, yeah, it's all just false.
Are you logging in the component right now?
Yep, logging here. So
Can you log inside the function too?
sure. Do you want me to here? Let's do let's go component loading, and then
Okay,
we'll
there you go.
do function uh, loading. I'll call it 1, 2, and 3. We'll just get a whole mess of stuff here. Okay, and we've got this, and okay, I'm going to refresh just to make sure that we have everything updated. Ooh, hello. What?
What is that?
I have no idea. I'm going to ignore that for a moment, and we'll see if it
Yeah.
remains a problem or if it's fine. Let's just try this and hit submit. So, okay. So
So they all say
everything
false.
is false. Loading 1, and then also we're getting loading 1, 2, 3 because that's from within the function, and then we're getting our component re-render on state change. So yeah, that's kind of what I was expecting. And then from what you were talking about with the batching, right? The states get batched, and then the last one is the one that actually like goes through, right? That's kind of the pattern. Now,
How is that different from what we did in or like the code you've commented out?
I think it's that we have an await here.
Okay.
We're awaiting something, and that's kind of like putting a pause. So, oh boy, it's been a while, but okay, so I was gonna try and do the thing that everybody does when they try to work this stuff, is like using a timer. You said a set timeout, but I'm trying to think of
Oh,
and then I was gonna try and insert like some sort of an await in here somewhere, but to see exactly what happens. But I think what it is that so we'd have to promisify set state or set timeout. Maybe the AI can do it for me really, really fast. Because
let's see what it says.
I could code it, but it's gonna take me a second to think about. Okay. Oh wow, just switch over to a new view here. But okay, so that's a whole mess of stuff. Okay. It's not a mess. I mean, I'm sure it'll work. Okay, so I'm gonna copy that. We'll come over here into source app components, and I'll just do a testing TSX, I guess I'll call it. Put this in here, and then this is the implementation. Wait. Use prompt set. Okay, so this is the implementation of it here. Do we have this exported? No, this is. Yeah, I want to export, right?
Yeah.
Because it's going to be a export, and then yeah, it returns all of this stuff, returns a promise with all this, yada yada yada. I think we can do away with, or what? So let's see, export, use promise timeout. Is this what we export? I'm confused by this thing down here. So this is example usage. And then we use it here. But if I comment this out, then that's not. Oh, that's the example promise. Okay. So I think what I need is this. and this. I want to put that here. Cannot find use promise timeout, and then that's going to be. Oh, I didn't need to make it a component. Okay, we're gonna. Don't mind me. We're just gonna throw the whole thing right in here. Oh, come on. Oh, and now we're gonna have TypeScript issues, of course. Maybe this wasn't. We do need use effect. Use effect current because there's a read-only property. Okay, what's even happening here? Execute and cancel. Await promise result. Cancel ref. Current. Use effect cannot be called inside of a callback. React function. Okay, yeah. This is inside of a. The AI is not. Let's see. Return new. Yeah, the fact that this use effect is here is it's not liking that. No, maybe this is not.
I'm looking things up too while you're.
Perhaps this is not the way. I'm gonna say that these errors we can maybe ignore, like, and just let it run. Like, we won't be able to build with it, but I think we might be able to just like run it anyways without.
Oh, I could be wrong, but one thing I'm seeing come up here is that the intended pattern for handling loading state is to use suspense components with like a fallback loading state, essentially.
Oh, inside of next?
Yeah.
Or is that a React thing?
Well, or React rather. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just gonna straight up admit defeat on that one. I don't.
At what point did you start to get the feeling? Because I know I get that sometimes too, where I'm like, okay, it's starting to feel like I'm doing a lot to try to make this one thing work. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Not worth it. Not worth it right now. I'm much more interested in what you just said.
Yeah, I have to think about how this would actually be implemented. But so there's the new suspense component. I think we even
Right.
use it somewhere in this file. I'm not in this. I'm sorry, not this file. In this project.
Yeah, we threw it in there somewhere.
So let me look up suspense and see how that works, particularly. React. Suspense. Suspense lets you display a fallback until its children have finished loading. That actually might not. Would that be the use case here? Displaying a fallback while content is loading. Okay, well that's.
Yeah, so I think that's more of like those like your
Like what your tasks are loading.
Your loading skeleton. Yeah, like there's the gray boxes that kind of pulse while you're waiting for stuff to come onto the page. Anyways, it works. This works. I feel like I just took us over in like a side route, and now I'm coming back, and it's just like, it works. Great.
If it works, it works.
This is supposed to be a use client thing, anyways. We've learned that, don't try to use a server action in the action prop in a form within use state, or instead of a component, client component. I need to be done talking, I guess. This is turning into a disaster really fast, but
I'm fine with this project for going with that, but just in a more general sense, I'm not fine with not knowing why that is.
I agree.
That drives me crazy. That's
I'm not,
probably going to be some boring looking research that needs to be done
and
outside of the
that's what I'm saying is like I'm not fine sitting here for the remainder of our time with both of us just like reading our screens in silence. Is there
Ah,
something else that we want to do? I can I can
we were talking
commit
about
this.
implementing a modal.
Oh yeah, that's going to be a bigger thing for sure.
Can you talk me through what that process is like? I haven't done it
Uh,
for like 3 years now, and that was with Bootstrap, so I don't even know if it would look the same.
yeah. We go to GitHub, we find a modal that's already been created, and then
Yeah,
we install their package.
yeah. I mean,
uh,
honestly, I'm fine with that. We don't need to reinvent it.
uh,
It's a solved problem, right?
it's yeah, it is a solved problem. It's cool to build that kind of front end stuff. I enjoy building those kinds of components. I mean, building that, you're gonna set a so you're gonna build the modal screen and the like semi transparent like grayed out background that'll go
Mm-hmm.
behind it. You're gonna put those two um, high up in your component tree. Uh, and then probably have to use global state of some sort to trigger them to show or not show, and then you can also set it up to like send content to it.
Hmm.
um, so you can, this is what I've seen
Do,
like
do you
in nebulae.
dynamically, like, let's say you have multiple use cases for different modals for different parts of the site. Does that mean that you like dynamically generate which component is showing when the modal activates?
Right, yeah, so you can have like a global like show modal, hide modal, boolean
Mm,
in your global state. You have your modal with the background and like the box, just the outline of it, that component high up in your tree, and then you have that component receive. Um, I think you also do that through the. Is that through the global state? I'd have to go and research it. But yeah, with like so deep further down inside of your component tree, somewhere in a component on a page, you click a button. You have that button. To that button, you're gonna send a signal to your global state to make the modal show, and you can also pass the HTML or the JSX that you want to show inside of the modal, and you set
mm,
that
mhm.
there, and then it will be injected into the modal, and the modal will pop up so that the modal itself is reusable, but then the content of the modal is flexible.
I like that. That's cool. When you say you place it high in the tree, like how high are we talking? Does this go like on
Uh, that would
the app level?
be it's a good question. So we have
Because it should be available to any other. Um,
So it would be in our to do, and see, we got the to do form. It's our div. Where's our main here? I think so. Then we're looking. That would be app. Well, we got to do and then page. So we have a page. Our main there. Now that's the navigation. So that's too high. What's our layout would be what goes around that. That's our HTML, our body. Um, So yeah, I'm thinking we'd probably put it in page.tsx. So to do, the to do page,
mhm.
because that is this page for this app, and then that would be available um, at any point there. If in the future, let's say we had our to do route and we have our to do app, and then that, let's say, had multiple pages that you could switch between. I'm in my mind, I'm thinking of it as like mostly just like a single page, without the multiple routes. But if you did, then you could put the modal above those pages in like the parent page, that, or the layout above those, or a common layout. You could make one layout that goes across each of those pages for the to do app,
Like that
and
that
you put,
every page would sit
yeah, and
in.
then you put the
Hmm.
modal in that layout, and then that layout is going to surround each of the pages for the app and will be available on each of those pages. So you only have to put the modal in one location. It's
I
built,
really like that.
yeah,
That's a
and
that's
then you
super
just
strong.
trigger it with global state, and then you send your content to it.
It's just about what you feed it, essentially.
Yeah, yeah, and
This will be
don't
the
ask me,
update
like,
for
I
a
couldn't
to
I
do.
couldn't
Or
code this right now. I need to do a little bit of, I understand it in theory, so, like, figuring it out is just a matter of, looking it up and giving it a try, but, that would definitely take a little bit of time and effort just to
more
get it
than
right.
13 minutes.
Yeah, more than 13 minutes. I mean, we'd have to bring in
What kind of
either
front end
Redux or
developer are you?
Sustand or something.
Yeah, totally.
Um,
Yeah, I know. Just implementing context is like a whole episode.
yeah, I mean, yes, it is, it is. Um, yeah, I mean, this installment is a little a little scattered. I mean, we've been talking mostly just about kind of like set state stuff and whatnot.
It is fascinating. I think it's something that gets taken for granted too by a lot of us, just because
Oh,
it
absolutely.
works, so we just use it. But then you keep. I've been thinking about this a lot. How with coding, there's so many use cases for a particular tech, like a loading state. It sounds easy enough and simple enough when you're just thinking about it. But then when you actually get down to how do I implement this, there's always some kind of wrinkle that makes you go, huh, why doesn't this work the way I was thinking? Um, and then that really itself involves a deep dive usually into how the technology is actually working. But the good news is, for all that time, you get that better understanding of what's
Mhm.
actually happening. So next time you run into that or something similar, you better know how to handle it.
Yeah. Yep.
You
Uh,
know what I've been
yeah.
using this last week that I learned from you last week, um, and it's not like groundbreaking. I've seen this before, but I'd never really understood how the syntax worked. But when you're passing down props to a component, let's say, that you can just in the component add curly braces and then spread the props into that, and then you can just access them directly from the component itself instead of having to be like, oh, the props are like user and then the user object inside of it. I can skip having a separate like user object and just have the actual props themselves passed directly down. I can't tell you how many times, especially early on, I've dealt with that and thought, why is this not working? Why, like, if I'm passing user info to the user prop on this, why do I have to now also have a user, you know, like part type essentially that fits within the props?
Hmm. Yeah.
That kind of thing. I just think it also looks cleaner too. It's a little easier to understand.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely. The way I've always categorized that pattern in my mind is to pass native properties or attributes down to HTML elements that are within your component, so you don't have to, like you're saying about, like, itemize every one of those in your own component, right? So you have a component that wraps the button, like an HTML
Hmm.
button, like we've made a button that wraps the HTML button, and we still want to be able to pass down the you know the native attributes like disabled, on click, um, you know, think about any of the attributes that you can pass down to any one of those HTML elements that exist on it by nature. And we don't want to have to itemize every single one of those. So you just want to be able to put disabled true or whatever in the on the custom button component and have it passed down through without having to. So that's in my mind, it's always reserved for using um, those native attributes. Anything that I'd be passing into the component that is going to go to the button, but isn't necessary. Well, I guess if it goes to the button, then it is native. Um, I was just going to say that obviously anything custom, then you're going to add to the prop so that it's itemized and a known quantity within the button, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
One thing we've been talking about that I would maybe like to do next week is like take a pause from adding new things, but start testing. I guess the performance of certain
Mm,
patterns. Um, I'm not set up on Google on Chrome right now, but I think there's like a lighthouse feature, if I'm
Yep.
not mistaken,
Yep.
that you can run things through, and then it'll give you metrics of some sort on. I don't know. I've never used it. I've just
Yep.
I was listening to a podcast recently, and this was brought up. Um, that would be an interesting thing to do, to see, because we've talked about server actions versus, I mean, server components and client components, and I'm honestly curious, like, what's the actual performance difference, if any?
Mm.
Like, I have things that I think are true, but I've just never bothered to actually confirm, um, one way or the
Yeah.
other.
Yeah. So the process there would be uh like building out two versions of the same component within our
And I
project and
think we
then
have a
testing them
couple,
against each
right?
other.
Because we never got rid of, like on our to do app, we never got rid of the backup
Oh
that
yeah,
still exists.
that does exist. You're right.
So it's like we have options for some of these. That was very smart on your part, by the way. Hold on to these. You never know if we might need them. We
And
finally need them.
I mean, I do that as a habit in my projects, just in case a direction I'm going down doesn't pan out. And then you could just like
Mm-hmm.
very easily reset back to what was before. Or if you get just tangled up in a mess for some reason, you can reset and try again. In this case, I wanted that because we worked quite a bit on making that all function. And there was a lot of really interesting information in there, specifically around how to type the form and that whole process. And I just didn't want to lose it. So that's really just there for, in my mind, was just to hold on to the stuff we did and the lessons we learned there, and we can refer back to that code again. Um, but yeah, now we have it for A/B testing against like more of a server action oriented side, and then also towards a that was like full client side. It would be cool to figure out how to benchmark those.
Benchmark. Thank you. That is the term I was looking for.
Yeah.
I don't
The
know. There's always a million other things to do.
Yeah. The other thing that we were offline, kind of like on LinkedIn, chatting back and forth about, and then we've talked a little bit back and forth on Discord about, is the intriguing idea of using Remix as
Yeah.
um, a framework versus Next. That was spurred on by that was spurred on. That conversation started when you mentioned the fact that OpenAI had switched from using Next to Remix, and then I started seeing videos on YouTube about people investigating, well, why did they make this switch? And then that triggered an idea of like, Remix seems interesting. Uh, and then I've seen now just multiple. I haven't watched any of them yet, but I've saved multiple videos that I came across that are different forms of comparing Remix versus Next in a few different ways, or uh, yeah, just comparing them. And I really want to
Hmm.
watch
Hmm.
those to see how they compare. Um,
I'd like to
it,
play around with it too myself.
yeah,
Like, can we build just a simple to do like we've done, um, with Remix, and like how how is that developer experience comparatively? Because there's things like we wouldn't have to redo building like a database and even entering things into it. We could potentially just connect a separate
yeah.
application to that same setup.
I think that
I'm interested in that.
that would be really cool. There's still React. It's still a React framework, so we might even
Hmm.
be able to pull a bunch of the code we already have for at least the more specific components over,
Yeah.
and be able to just like rejigger them to like work within Remix. However, because Remix is going to handle things differently. Um, I like the idea of exploring some frameworks. Like I've been wanting to try out Solid JS for quite some time.
Mm.
Um, we've made mention before of
Spelt.
Svelte. People really like Svelte. Um, I really like Vue and Nuxt, and I haven't used those for quite some time. You also have mentioned that you like Vue. We don't have to suddenly go into. I mean, you could do the whole thing, build the same app in 5 different frameworks. But with Remix, it seems like Remix is suddenly gaining some notoriety, probably with the OpenAI thing. Switch is bringing some attention to it. but it's
Mm.
sounding like it might have some legitimately big gains on like the way Next operates, and it can make improvements. Um, which is the way all this stuff works. I
Yeah,
mean, like
yeah.
React is so embedded in the industry, but it's old. I mean, they keep updating it and whatnot, but its core technology is built on patterns that I believe, from what I've heard, is that people have improved upon React, and there are better alternatives that function better. They function faster. They better developer experience. All this jazz. But React is so embedded in the industry that while you have a better technology as an alternative, people aren't going to just start using it because it's not the thing that everybody knows, right? You've got all these code bases that are in React. You've got all these developers that know React. So it just kind of perpetuates the same, loosely outdated technology if you take that really,
Mhm.
really loosely. Um, which I'm sure has always
Yeah.
that's always been a problem in tech. I'm sure. Just going back to, the new thing is newer and better, but everything's built in the old thing. So how are you going to switch?
Well, React is so strange because I remember when I was in boot camp, it was hard for me to understand, like, is React a library or a framework? Because those mean different things.
Technically a library, I think, but
Yeah, and I would say these days feels actually like a library more than it maybe once did. Especially now that Create React app is no longer supported. If you really want to quickly create a React app, you're using what do they call it? A meta framework, like a Next, Remix, something that's built upon React as a library, basically.
Vite.
Vite, yeah, that's a
That's a little
popular
bit
one.
more. That I don't
I've
know if that's really not a framework. That's like more of a build
Yeah,
environment,
yeah, it's
because
like
you have
a
to bring in like a router and React and all of that stuff,
right,
which is
right.
not
It's not there's
included in
no
Vite.
batteries included
Yeah,
with Vite.
yeah, but Vite's fast.
I built one React app before just from the ground up, like configuring Webpack myself and like
Ooh,
all of that. And it's like it's a good experience. But I definitely see the strength in actually just using something that handles all that because
yeah,
99% of the time you just need it to be the same thing. You don't
yep.
need it to be some highly configured project, but there are use cases, and it's good to know how that works. So
Yeah,
yeah.
diving into more specific Webpack configuration is one of those many things that's been on my list to learn for quite some time, and it's just kind of like you get busy with other things. And like I don't have the time to go and like tool around with Webpack. Just need it to work.
Yeah.
Um, but that reminds me, one of the other things that's cool about Remix is that it runs on Vite.
And React Router, right?
Yeah, and React Router. And I just saw another video. I don't know, sure, I'm not sure if I sent it to you. Talking about how React Router is becoming its own framework,
Oh, really?
and it's backwards compatible with like every project that's already running React Router.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Uh, and apparently people love the new React Router. I have a bad I have a bad memory of React Router in some of my really early days trying to
Mm,
do my own projects using React Router, and I didn't fully understand the idea of front end routing. Like I was still pretty
mhm.
new at that point, and I remember really struggling with React Router and trying to do things inside of that paradigm. So then I discovered things like Nuxt and Next, which have um, file tree routing systems. And ever since then, it's just been like, oh, this is beautiful. Uh, but apparently, a lot of people really, really, really like React Router, and that's in, like you said, in Remix, and Remix also uses Vite, which I'm a huge fan of. Um, so maybe we just switch and we move over to Vite.
I'm down to try these things. I
We should, yeah.
as played out maybe as the concept is, I'm very interested in building these things. The same thing, the same to do app with different frameworks, just to see like what is different, where are the strengths of one versus another, what
Mhm.
feels easier here and harder there. Like that's the kind of thing I want to really dig into because you and I have a project that we're gonna have to make decisions on, and like Hopefully there will be a whole career of decisions to be made, and it'd be nice to know,
Yeah.
like, what do I like? What will I need? Because I think also sometimes what gets lost is that sometimes these frameworks are good for a specific thing
Mm,
or a general set of tasks compared to others. And that's good to know.
yeah. On the last note that I'll make here real quick is the idea that we started this venture with Upskill and Chill, um, specifically talking about how we want to dig further into the Next framework and learn more about Next. And we've done some of that. It's been some TypeScript learning, Next learning, React learning, um, and there's more to Next. Like we haven't really specific. We our exploration has been guided by the needs of our app, not so much the
Hmm.
idea of picking aspects of Next that we want to study and then building
Right.
something to study that feature. Um, so maybe we could shift and go in more of that direction a little bit potentially. But what I was my original thought that I was going to say is since we started the show and doing this, which was just supposed to be Next React practice and learning, um, we built an entire app using Next.js in a month for our super secret startup. I have been up to my eyeballs in Next and React code at Nebulae, and getting a lot of reps over there. You've been building your awesome server component, JWT token, session storage stuff with around Practice Buddy, right? That's in Next.
That's right. That's
Um,
also next.
so correct. You feel free to speak for yourself. I'm just in this moment realizing that I think I feel a little bit nexted out, where I'm doing so much in Next that in the spirit of the show, um, I'm feeling a little bit like, of course, there's more things to learn, but the I don't know, the drive to like really dive further into Next has maybe faded a little bit because I've been doing so much Next. And maybe we could consider the idea of shifting and exploring Remix for a time, um, and just like kind of like basically rebuilding our app. Maybe we won't get quite as specific. I mean, this app still isn't even pretty, but we could even go less pretty and just like really look at the guts of how things work as opposed to spending time on styling, and just figuring out like learning the new patterns in there. Um, and some time spent away from Next in this context might be kind of nice for when we come back. We could look at other specific things we want to learn, but then also learning about Remix. I don't know what your thoughts are towards anything there that I said there.
Yeah, I have two thoughts on that. One, I'm a little nexted out too, but what I like about that is that I'm feeling really comfortable in the next ecosystem at this point.
Yeah.
Where to find answers, what are the design patterns. There's like a couple paradigms within Next even still to design from. There's not only the server thing, but you can take a more traditional client side approach, and that totally works as well. Like so, when another, especially like a professional project comes up, I'm actually kind of excited that it's Next because I just have so much more knowledge and
Yeah.
familiarity with that. However, uh, not only do I feel a little nexted out, but I also one piece of advice I've heard from older developers or people with more experience over and over is that you don't want to necessarily be tied to a specific technology because
Mm,
technology is always changing. Um, there's always going to be new things to learn, and the best thing you can do is be good at learning new things because it's unlikely that anybody is going to be able to like fully predict what the next thing is and get ahead of the game and then like always be ready for that. But what you can do is learn how to learn. And so
mm,
you and I taking some time to build and remix because this has been a topic as of late, probably a lot because of OpenAI, but I know it's been around also for a minute. Um, I think it's worth looking into and just even if down the line you or myself or both of us have to learn yet another framework for a job or a project, we'll just be better suited to do that by learning something new now. So I'm super down. I hear you. I won't be stopping using next, whether we do it here or not. That's
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, and that was kind of the thought of like it'd be like as a little bit of a breath of fresh air might be kind of nice to just totally switch things up and try something else. We can always come back to this. I'm not going to say we're not going to trash the project or anything, um, but just kind of following the losing my words. I'm not gonna. I was gonna say trends, but it's not following trends. Um, just following a new exciting thing, right? Like we can. This is our
Mhm.
show. We can do whatever we want. We started out with next. We'll come back to next. We're doing lots of next. And yeah, like you said, job application comes up and it says next JS. I was like, okay, yeah, apply. Like I got
Easy.
that.
I can handle
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
you can go into that job that interview being very confident about and showing the skills that you have in that world. But what you also said about um, technology changes and not locking yourself down to one thing is great advice. So I totally agree.
Someday next won't be next. It'll be
Yeah,
last. It'll be something else will be next.
somebody should absolutely do last JS. Like just make it.
Yeah. This is the final JS framework. That's great.
um, yeah, I think exploring remix. Either we could start that next week or the week after or something. We'll have to evaluate how to exactly do that. Because whenever I go to learn a new technology like that, I usually go on YouTube and I just look up like beginner guide to, and then I just build
Mm.
along a thing with whatever they do, um, just to get that explanation. But I don't know. Would it could be kind of fun to try and build something together off of just the documentation?
Just sit on the docks
Yeah.
and read our way to victory. I'm
I
not
would
mad at that. Yeah.
I would say we would both need to be required to spend at least a couple of hours before day of to like get some familiarity, so it's not just us sitting here and reading, but be
I
able to
guess
come up
that
with
would
a
be
little.
responsible.
Yeah, that would be. Anyways, yeah. So be looking for some remix information here soon, hopefully.
Give it a rip.
Okay, with that, we'll call it a day. This was a bit more kind of talking and exploration, but it was good. It was fun. Thank you, anybody and everybody, for watching and joining, and look forward to some remix content very soon. I'm actually getting excited about that. That sounds fun.
I love this. Okay. Yeah. Take care, everyone.
All
Have a
right,
good weekend.
have a good one. I'm gonna end our stream here.